Welcome to the Cooper Surgical Fertility and Genomic Solutions ESHRE Symposium. My name's Stephen Fleming, and I'm the Director of Embryology for Cooper Surgical. I shall be the moderator for today's proceedings. Today's Fertility Symposium concerns the quality of care from the perspectives of the scientist in the lab, the clinician in the clinic, and most importantly, from the patients receiving fertility treatment. We're fortunate to have our President of Fertility and Genomics, David Hansen, available to launch the symposium, explaining from our perspective why every step matters. And we're honored to have Laura Rienzi speak to us about how lab technologies such as cryopreservation help to improve the quality and safety of treatments. And also honored to have Willem Verpoest speak to us about how it is the patient who decides whether the quality of care in the IVF clinic is indeed good enough. David Hansen is now President of Fertility and Genomics at Cooper Surgical, having joined Origio in 2015 as President and Managing Director. With a degree in Economics, Politics and Social Science from Roskilde University and an MBA from California State University, he has over 20 years global experience in various managerial positions within the biopharm, ITC, and medtech industries, and within capital markets. Laura Rienzi is a senior clinical embryologist and laboratory director at the Genera Centers for Reproductive Medicine in Rome, Marostica, Umbertide, and Naples. She obtained her biological degree, magna cum laude, at the University of Rome La Sapienza, and her master's in reproductive medicine at the University of Padua. She was elected president of the Italian Society of Embryology, Reproduction and Research in 2014 and is an adjunct professor of biotechnology in assisted reproduction in the Faculty of Biology at the University of Urbino. Willem Verpoest is medical director in reproductive medicine and coordinator for the PGT program at the Centre for Reproductive Medicine, Universitair Ziekenhuis, Brussels, and professor at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels, VUB. He graduated in medicine and as a specialist in obstetrics and gynecology from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium and obtained his PhD in medical sciences on the clinical reproductive outcome of PGT. As already indicated, my role is to act as the chair of this symposium, and I will be selecting questions from your submissions to the Q&A window. So now it's over to David.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our symposium. My name is David Hansen from Cooper Surgical, Fertility and Genomics. At Cooper Surgical, we believe that it is a human right to have a child, and we should aim to provide the highest quality care for the fertility couples. There's so much more that can be done to improve outcomes, and in these times of change, I suggest that we jointly work to improve the quality of care. Quality has improved in IVF over the last decade. However, pregnancy rates are now flattening. In fact, ESHRE showed the pregnancy rates for IVF and ICSI has peaked. The data that they showed at the ESHRE 2019 showed 27.1% pregnancy per IVF treatment and 24.3% following ICSI. We need to take treatment to the next level. A fundamental challenge is the increasing lack of embryologists in some countries. This creates bottlenecks that are also created due to all the extra procedures that needs to happen in a laboratory today. The bottleneck can partly be solved by standardizing protocols and practices and by ensuring staff receive continuous training. It is a very complex industry. There are lots of new technologies to learn and lots of best practices to pick up from others. But we believe that there's not enough quality training options accessible in many countries. We therefore encourage making digital training platforms a fully integrated part of employee education. A good QMS system will often be helpful to ensure control of all the parameters that you need control over to ensure high quality of the treatment. ESRA already has set a standard for total quality management in ART, and at the ESRA website there are a lot of good resources to use for setting up your laboratory and to optimize the treatment. Clinical diagnostics as a quality tool can also help to improve outcomes. PDTA testing may even prevent discarding viable embryos or transferring aneuploid embryos. It is our responsibility, joint responsibility as the fertility community to improve the standards. This industry can help many more millions of families. It's a win-win for both patient and for all of us. By improving the standards and optimizing the processes, we can make fertility treatment much more widely accessible. We have to change some of our practices to make this happen. At Cooper Surgical, our responsibility is to be your trusted quality partner on this journey. We try to our best every day to offer quality in every step, in the products that we provide for all steps of the treatment, innovative solutions that you can use to test new hypotheses in your laboratory to improve your processes, consulting services to be with you side by side when you establish new modus operandum, training options, and knowledge sharing. Quality is the foundation upon which we keep innovating. Examples are clinical tools that we provide, such as the high-quality catheters Wallace, culture media and oils, such as the large suite of media options we have called Sage, Oridio, and Life Global, known by most clinics out there. Lab management, such as the RI Witness, which not only secures effective double witnessing, but also aids the social distancing requirements in your laboratory. And then we have a lot of innovative diagnostics, such as the AI-enabled PDT testing, and then the ERP. Our common goal is an industry where all are held accountable, where digital tools monitor and guide us to compliance with standards, where transparency in data is self-evident, where all relevant data are available for increased learning, and where automation, such as microfluidics, robotics, etc., AI, and standardization has taken embryology to a whole new level. And ultimately, where more than 80% of cycles lead to a healthy child. We believe that if we put our minds to it, it is realistic to get there already within the next 5 to 7 years, if we start now. This symposium aims to outline some of the ways that we can improve quality in the treatment. Thank you very much and enjoy the symposium.
Hello, everybody. It's a big pleasure for me to be part of this very special ESRA meeting. I would like to thank Cooper Surgical for this invitation. It's a very nice symposium. I hope you will like. I'm going to talk about the key role of cryopreservation in IVF. I'm going to focus on how lab technology helps to improve quality and safety of treatment, which is the relationship between lab and clinician and how we can both work to make it better for patients. These are my disclosure, nothing related to this specifically with this presentation. So we all know that IVF cannot reverse the natural age-related decline in fertility. We cannot repair or change the quality of the oocyte, of the sperm, and the deriving gamete. So what we do in IVF is to try to compensate for it. And how do we do it? it's a challenge between clinical part and lab part. First of all, the challenge for gynecologists is to increase the number of oocytes available for the lab, for the couples. More oocytes we have in the lab, more probably we will have more embryos, and so more chance of pregnancy, more chance of finding the right embryo for our couples. And in the lab, what do? We try to help the fertilization process by bypassing the mechanical barriers between the sperm and the egg with IVF and ICSI particularly, to obtain fertilization where the sperm alone would not be able to bypass all the barriers. And then, of course, in the lab, we have a big responsibility to try to identify the best embryo, the one with the highest implantation potential, to help a patient to get the right embryo as soon as possible. Because, of course, we know how much time is invasive for the patient, how much the patient journey is difficult, and how much we can, in the lab, help to make it easier and faster. Then, of course, cryopreservation is really very important because it helps to enhance cumulative chance of pregnancy. If we have more embryo, if we have supernumerary embryo, we can perform more transfer, fresh plus cryopreserved embryos to enhance the cumulative chance of success. And of course, also what is very challenging today is to assess embryogenomics, embryomics in general, ideally not invasively, to get information on the health of the embryo to avoid transferring those embryos that potentially are dangerous for the pregnancy and the patients. So big responsibility of the lab, big challenge to try to maximize the success rate by using more oocytes as possible, by obtaining more fertilized oocytes, by obtaining more embryo, being able to evaluate which is the best one to be transferred, by cryopreserving the other embryos to enhance the cumulative chance of pregnancy, and also by assessing the health of the embryo. These are all the challenges that today we have to face in the lab. We are going to focus today on cryopreservation, and in particular on vitrification, one of our challenges, to make a very efficient cryopreservation program in every single lab in the world. And vitrification is a game changer. Why? Because it has really improved the efficiency of our cryopreservation programs, not only for embryos, but also for oocytes. And in turn, it has offered a lot of new possibilities for our patients. First of all, of course, as I said, if we have a very good cryopreservation program, we can enhance the community's live birth rate per oocyte retrieval. But this is not the only aim of cryopreservation. If you have a very good cryopreservation program, you will move more easily to a systematic application of elective single embryo transfer. Because of course, if you trust the cryopreservation program, you will be able to transfer one by one, knowing that you're not going to lose the supernumerary embryo by cryopreserving them. Then it also provides the opportunity to perform cycle segmentation or free zone to be able to avoid transferring embryo in case of risk for the patients, for instance, hyperstimulation syndrome. Then it offers also an incredible possibility for the lab, which is to extend the time for embryo evaluation. And this is why today we can apply new technology for embryo assessment, because we may cryopreserve embryo and have enough time to make this kind of analysis. But it also has made big changes in patient flow, because today, due to the efficient cryopreservation of oocytes, we can do fertility preservation for patients that may risk to lose their fertility potential for medical or non-medical indication. And this is really a new technology, a new patient population that can access to our treatment because of this lab technology. It also, cryopreservation, it also enables egg banking for donation. And this is also incredible because like in my country where we don't have donors, we can import oocyte vitrified and make accessible to our Italian patient egg donation in their own country, which is really an incredible success when thinking about treatment accessibility. And this is all because of this lab technology, vitrification, a game changer, something that has completely changed the structure of our lab. Basically, because it improves so much the survival rate of any stage of development, from the oocyte to the end. And in turn, it increases the clinical success rate. This is our systematic review and meta-analysis that we have published on New Reproduction Update. And what we have shown is that you can obtain a very high survival rate at any stage of development, from 2PN to blastocyst. Look, it's incredible, from 88 to 100% survival rate in each single study. All the studies comparing slow freezing and vitrification are in favor of vitrification. 95.8% the survival rate. Now it seems normal, but 10 years ago, it would have been really a revolution to imagine that we would get there. More than 95% survival rate. And this is also true for very specific cells, such as the oocyte. Such a difficult cell to cryopreserve, not because of the size, but because of intrinsic sensitivity, the membrane permeability, the presence of a meiotic spindle, the sensitivity of aging, the impact of oocyte, of culture, in vitro culture on the oocyte physiology. We have many, many drawbacks when we look to this cell in vitro, and vitrification has been successful also for this stage of development. Not only ensuring a good survival rate, but also ensuring implantation potential equivalent to the sibling fresh oocyte, and also not an increased risk of aneuploidy. This has been shown in this sibling oocyte study. So it's very nice to see that we are not increasing risk for our patients by applying vitrification of oocytes. And also obstructive and perinatal outcomes have been reported to be not affected by the procedure. So really an incredible challenge that has been won by vitrification. Now, a very recent study has observed that cryopreservation may increase cancer risk in children. I bring this paper because it has been a big debate in the newspaper. But basically, what they observe is that IVF is not related to an increased risk of cancer risk in children. Just a sub analysis looking to cryopreservation has shown a little increase in cancer risk. But this is a sub-analysis underpowered and very nicely shown by this comment and response from Ludovico Parmigiani and Gabor Baita. Future study has to clarify if this association is an incidental finding, and also it was related to slow freezing and not vitrification. So we cannot state that vitrification increased risk of cancer in newborns. This is really only one study underpowered. But still, we have to continue looking to our children, that's for sure. Vitrification has also changed the figure when we come to PGD at that time, PGT today, pre-implantation genetic testing. Because before the introduction of vitrification, the survival rate of biopsy embryo was very, very low. And this has really affected the application of PGD globally. Because if you don't have survival rate, you lose embryo, you lose chance for your patient, but have a genetic risk. It was very difficult to make this technology available, especially at blastocyst stage. But with vitrification, the story has changed. Although the embryos has a hole in the zona pellucida due to the biopsy and is collapsed, it survives very, very well to vitrification. Even more, the collapse induced by the biopsy is positive for the survival rate of the biopsy blastocyst. So very high survival also after biopsy. So this is, again, a challenge that has been won by vitrification. You can cryopreserve biopsy embryo very safely and very efficiently. So in other terms, you can do cryopreservation by vitrification at any stage of development with a very high success rate, looking to survival, implantation. It's clear that you have a better survival and a better implantation potential if you are at blastocyst stage, which is highly selected embryos. as compared to oocyte, but you may have indication, patient will, but of course, if it's fertility preservation, they have no sperm available, so oocyte is indicated. If you correct the results by the absolute number of cells available, you have 10 oocytes as a mean for 3 blastocysts. So if you correct per absolute number, you will see that you may apply cryopreservation by vitrification at any stage of development with very high success rate and comparable success rate. This is really very useful for personalizing the treatment according to the patient indication. Okay, vitrification is really super successful, a game changer in IVF, but it's not always consistent across labs and operators. This is true because it's a manual procedure. And of course, manuality involves difference between operators. You have very stringent time and pick and place operation that you have to do manually. So you can be tired, you can be differently trained. There is difference between operators in the same lab and difference between lab to lab. Manuality needs a learning curve, has some critical aspects related to timings. You cannot be really strict in timings. When you do it manually, you may make some mistakes. And of course, you may also lose the cell in the viscous media. This can happen, especially when you are in the training period. So any kind of manual process is not really standard and consistent between operators and lab. And this is something that we don't want. We want patients to have always the same quality of treatment everywhere in every single lab. So what do we see for the future? We see a single procedure. So everybody should work with the same protocols. Efficiency and safety should be always maintained. And for instance, if there is problem with open system, you can use sterilized nitrogen to make sure that you can really preserve safety and efficiency during each stage of the procedure. But what I see for the future, to make it really standard and reproducible and everywhere the same, is of course automation. Automation will be, in my view, the future of ART, and especially for vitrification. As you can see, there are already some machines available on the market, and it's really very important to imagine that we could offer to the patient everywhere in the world the same quality of a procedure, and only a machine can ensure this. And it's really very important when thinking globally. So automation is not only able to standardize volume, timings, manipulation, but eventually we can gain more information during the process. We can see how each embryos behave in the different cryoprotectant, the volume changes. So it's also may also help to improve the technology itself. So really big challenge and big future for IVF by introducing automation in our setting. Now we have many embryos or many cells that are cryopreserved everywhere all around the world because of all the indications we were talking about. So we have a problem of storage. Storage has become completely different with many unavoidable and avoidable risks that are related, as I said, to the theoretical transmission of disease between samples, by bacteria contamination in the liquid nitrogen, but also by reduced viability over the time in storage. If the storage is not performed perfectly, you have a risk of accidental premature warming, but of course will damage the cells, or improper traceability and sample misidentification. So we have to imagine that our cryo room has to change completely. What about cross-contamination? It's probably a negligible risk because the potential viral load of a single gamete or embryo is certainly insufficient to cause uterine or placental transfection, but we have the responsibility to keep every single step of our procedure under control. And this includes also infectious agents. So as I said, we need to introduce like sterile nitrogen to be able to reduce even more this negligible risk. Then, of course, our cryo room has completely changed aspect. We need big tanks that will with digital systems that are really able to ensure that the temperature is under control, the level of nitrogen is under control, remote alarms. We have a responsibility for thousands of cells, so we need to have the technology able to ensure this big responsibility. What about traceability? It's also a very sensitive point. Traceability is essential in IVF during the cycle, but even more during cryopreservation that can last for years and years. And also the label in cryopreservation has to be different, has to be resistant to leaking nitrogen. So we need to have a very good and efficient traceability system to be sure that our cryo storage inventory is precise and double check with no risk of misidentification. So many challenges for the lab. Vitrification has changed the structure of the lab, have gave us a lot of incredible opportunity, improvement in survival rate for any stage of development, even for biopsied embryos, new timing for cryopreservation. The lab is always ready for the patient will and the clinician will. We can cryopreserve at any moment. It takes 15 minutes, no problem. New flexibility of the lab, and this is very important in the relationship between clinician and lab that has to be always available for patient, both of them. But we need also a lot of investment in the lab, high technological standards to be sure to offer the best standards, because quality means safety in IVF. What about KPIs? How do we keep under control our cryopreservation system? Not only by looking to outcomes. Everybody has KPI for outcomes, survival rate, fertilization rate, after oocyte warming, embryo development, implantation. But this is only outcome KPIs. We also have to have structural KPIs and process KPIs. Also, everything that is involved in the cryopreservation and the storage has to be under control, which also include laboratory staff injuries, also embryo loss, number of critical instruments, alarms, everything has to be under control. It's a big challenge, a new challenge for embryologists. So to conclude, cryopreservation is essential in ART. It's not only an additional procedure, it's an essential one. And it's really necessary to optimize an IVF cycle. According to the updated evidence, vitrification is the best strategy for all stages of development, including oocyte and biopsy embryos. Single embryo transfer policy, freeze-all, oocyte cryopreservation, biopsy, PGT in general is not a challenge anymore for the lab. Vitrification is there, and new clinical approaches are possible because we trust our cryopreservation program. So it's opened the door to new approaches for clinicians, to the best approaches for clinicians that can really personalize their treatment according to the patient necessity, because the lab is there to ensure survival rate, very high survival rate for any stage of development. But we need to be supported with technological instrument, with high technology, with alarm. It's a new world where technology is really very important, and tomorrow also automation to even better ensure quality and safety. In other words, if you have an excellent lab technology like vitrification, you can in turn increase safety for the IVF patient. And this is a super responsibility for embryologists, and of course, something so important. And it's really very important that we consider it every day of our life in the lab. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would like to thank all the lab and all the clinicians of the General Centers for Reproductive Medicine to help me every day in doing my work, which I really love, and I'm really passionate about embryologists, and I hope that I have been something useful for you all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a pleasure to be part of this symposium, scientific symposium. Thanks very much to Cooper Surgical for inviting me to speak. And it's a real pleasure and an honor also to be speak alongside Laura Rienzi, who's an absolute expert in the field. I have been invited to talk on quality in the IVF clinic. My name is Willem Verpoest. I'm a medical director at one of the IVF centers in Belgium, more specifically the Center for Reproductive Medicine at the UZ Brussels. My disclosures: I receive speakers' fees from a number of companies, which I use for professional research purposes. Registration fees for symposia and conferences, and University Hospital and our center receive research grants and educational grants from a number of companies. But personally, I do not have any commercial or financial interest. So quality in the IVF clinic as opposed to quality in the IVF lab seems to be also a very obvious thing, a logical thing that is required to offer the best care for the patient. The question is, as opposed to quality in the IVF lab, what is quality in the IVF clinic? How do we define it? And how do we measure it? And I will talk about a number of key performance indicators and other tools, how we can measure IVF quality in the IVF clinic, as far as I can. I will also try to find some tools to improve and maintain quality in the IVF clinic, including clinical tools and including some points about quality management system. So what is quality, and what is quality more specifically in the IVF lab, and who am I to tell you this? I have been working now for 18 years at this center, which is the largest IVF center in Belgium, and we perform around 5,500 oocyte retrievals a year, which takes us above 1/4 of all IVF cycles performed in Belgium. If you know that there are 17 IVF clinics in Belgium, you understand that in this single center we run a lot of cycles. It's not about numbers, of course, it's about quality, and we take pride in the fact that according to the Belgian registry, we perform above average, as far as the chance of a live-born child is concerned. Is this quality? Well, we think it is, but of course, it's not the only thing that counts, especially towards the patient. We are accredited and certified for all types of accreditation systems in the lab, Belgian accreditation, the ISO 15189. We are certified for the clinic by an ISO NEN 15224. 2017, we have ESHRE accreditation for subspecialist training, ART, good clinical practice. Is this quality? Well, we think it is. We think we are certified and accredited for quality. The question is, of course, is this really a proof of quality in the lab? In the clinic, I mean. Quality in the IVF laboratory, without being disrespectful to the lab, because the strength of an IVF clinic, of course, is what I always tell my patients in the lab. It's the lab that makes the difference. Like in a good restaurant, it's the kitchen that makes the difference. Quality in the IVF lab is a manufacturing quality to a large extent. It's a conformance to specifications set by a manufacturer according to the standards set by that manufacturer. So it's about producing something according to the standards that are set. Quality in the IVF clinic is what I would call more a holistic experience, a holistic project, because the patient and the referrers are important in this whole story. And that's why I use the subtitle, the patient decides whether it's good enough. The quality of the IVF clinic is more visible to the patient and to the referrer as well. So the perception by the customer or the client or the patient is what defines the quality in the IVF clinic, more so than in the IVF lab. How do we measure quality in the IVF clinic? Well, it's not easy. Quality in the IVF lab is all about control charts and competency levels and benchmarks, and I'm sure Laura has spoken on this prior to my talk. Quality in the IVF clinic is not about control charts or much less so. It's much less objective. It's much less easy to actually quantify. Again, because the patient is at the center of it and the patient decides whether the quality is good enough. How do we know the patient is happy with the quality? So, Of course, we have set a number of key performance indicators, and so have a number of other institutions. And we know, for example, that ESHRE is preparing a guideline on key performance indicators in the IVF clinic. And what I would like to do with you is look at some of these key performance indicators. Of course, the most important indicator for good IVF practice is cumulative live birth, or any other type of number that expresses the chance of getting a child or getting pregnant. However, this is of course, this is quantified. This is registered in clinics, in national registries and international registries. But I would claim that this is more like a joint clinical and lab outcome parameter. It tells something about the performance of the whole institution rather than of an individual or a procedure. It's the indicator of performance of an entire organization, and it has many, many explanatory variables. If we look, for example, at the figures that are published in Belgium each year by the Belgian registry, these are the figures of 2016. They do not change too much over the years. They keep on increasing, of course. But what is remarkable is the important difference between the 17 IVF clinics in Belgium as far as delivery rate is per embryo transferred. And this is important because if this is an important quality measure, if this is a performance indicator, then we should be concerned about some of the clinics. Of course, there are outliers and they may not register correctly, but there is a difference between the centers on the left side and the ones on the right side where we fortunately belong to. So if this is a performance indicator, then surely we should, there should be reasons why the quality in some centers is less good. There are, of course, a number of hospital-wide, institution-wide performance indicators, and they keep on increasing with the increasing number of certification and accreditation processes that are taking place. We have a lot of administrative performance indicators. Consent forms should be available, and then it's being registered whether they are being signed. Sign-in, time-out at the time of oocyte retrieval or operating surgical procedures. Is there a discharge letter or not? I mean, there's a huge list of administrative performance indicators, I would call them, that need to be okay. Fair enough, it's important to provide that as well and have a good patient file and provide in that way a quality to the patient. If the patient requests a file, we can offer it. Does it improve the chances of the patient getting pregnant? That is the question. And then there are IVF center specific performance indicators. The main outcome performance indicator, key performance indicator we use is the pregnancy rate per embryo transfer per operator and also per biologist. We propose a number of other performance indicators, the rate of oocytes retrieved per follicle or per 100 follicles, for example, the pain score at oocyte retrieval. As far as rate of oocytes is concerned, I'm aware that in the Vienna consensus, this was indicated as a reference indicator. Of course, it's an important one because these are the eggs that are delivered to the lab. The lab can only perform if there are eggs that are being delivered. And it seems that we're on the interface between clinic and lab when we have to provide them with the oocytes. But whether it's a good performance indicator for an operator, I'm not so sure. I think there's more that needs to be documented about this. I think personally the pain score at oocyte retrieval is an important one. We have not introduced it yet as a key performance indicator, but it's an important one because the perception, again, of the patient, the quality of the procedure, and I think an oocyte retrieval can be performed nearly painless. I think it's an important one. But let's focus on pregnancy rate per transfer, and I'm showing you some figures of our own clinic. The print is very small, but in the top table is the pregnancy rate per transfer by operator. These are the gynecologists that perform transfers at our center, and the biologist. Now, as far as the biologists are concerned, they are doing embryo transfers with all of the gynecologists above. So their levels of pregnancy rate level out because they transfer with good operators and less good operators. But remarkably, and I've taken 2 examples of operators that perform a large number of transfers, the results vary between 50% and 35%, for example. That's a huge difference. I mean, if the patient would be aware of this and this difference in what we could call quality, then the patient would definitely choose, of course, the operator that transfers at a 50% rate. And what we see is that, one, the good operators usually perform at a similar level. And 2, there is room for improvement for those who have less good figures. So I think it's an important one, but how can we improve and maintain quality? How can we improve and maintain live birth rates being high? How can we improve and maintain transfer rates, for example? So I've been thinking about a number of clinical tools, and I will propose some that we use. I think first and foremost, very important is, of course, clinical knowledge and skills, education and training, external certification for training as well. There are a number of organizations that are organized to provide training, not only within the center, but also at the level of scientific organizations and even in industry. Pharmaceutical and biomedical companies offer training as well. We at our center, we have a reproductive skills center, and what we observe, and you can see a picture of young gynecologists doing virtual training for embryo transfer and oocyte retrieval. And we have a skills lab for training in the lab as well. Now, oocyte retrieval and embryo transfer, you will say, well, it's a very simple procedure. Yes, it is, of course, but as I have shown you before, the differences can be quite significant. So even training for this simple procedure will improve the quality in the IVF clinic and performance as well. As I mentioned before, so skills labs for these simple procedures, skills lab for endoscopy, of course, accreditation for subspecialist training, which improves the quality of training as well because it is certified and it's been reviewed every so much time, is something that we believe is extremely important and which we believe has contributed to the success at our specific center. Many scientific organizations, and I repeat also industry, provide training. ESHRE is, by example, provides excellent training. And I refer to a number of guidelines as well, not only to the e-campus, as they call it, where you can find a number of interesting courses, but also guidelines, for example, on oocyte retrieval and ultrasound, etc. Having said that, I think what we should not forget is that in IVF centers, especially large IVF centers as ours, what is very important as well, that senior people are also there. In centers that are more and more management driven and managed as businesses very often, we ought not to forget that passing on the experience from a senior to a junior person is extremely important as well. And the same accounts for sure in the lab. Correct me if I'm wrong. An extremely important tool to improve quality is clinical research. It doesn't seem to have an immediate effect, but centers that are into research, that are doing research, even smaller centers that are collaborating with larger centers for research, they will improve their quality because they are involved in protocol writing, procedures, trying to find new novel ways to improve the quality. At different levels of the clinic, there are, of course, a huge number there's a lot of research going on in the lab to improve culture media, freezing techniques, etc., but also in IVF clinic, endocrine monitoring, for example. And I'm referring to a couple of papers, recent papers from our center, showing that, for example, measuring progesterone levels in the follicular phase can have an enormous impact on decision-making, but also not only on the strategy to freeze the embryos or transfer fresh, but also to assess the quality. impact of serum estradiol levels, for example, in frozen embryo transfer. Timing of pickup and transfer, a lot of studies have been done, elective freeze strategies, and what I personally think is very important as well in IVF clinic is intention to treat analyses. The patient, again, is at the center of the intention to treat analysis, not only the progesterone levels or the estrogen levels, but what do we tell our patient? Because it's not only about taking decisions at the end of the treatment, but also at the beginning explaining to the patient what the possibilities are, but also what the limitations are. And intention to treat analyses, including patient selection, good responders, poor responders, good prognosis, poor prognosis, is very important. Because quality is also about providing the right information to the patient. To give you an example, for our PGT patients, and PGT is one of our core businesses, we did the exercise to see how many eggs are really needed to come to a cumulative live birth rate. And of course, if the patient only has one egg available, the cumulative live birth rate is below 5%, and even 2 eggs does not provide a good chance. But as soon as the patient comes to 3 or 4 or more eggs, there is a realistic cumulative live birth rate, and the same accounts for the number of embryos that are available. As soon as the patient has 1 embryo available for genetic analysis, there is a reasonable cumulative, well, what you could call a feasible or a realistic, let's say, cumulative live birth rate. This is a tool that we often use, and it's not so much about the green area for the good prognosis patients, but more about the red area to show the patients that even in the highest quality standards, the highest quality lab, and the best stimulation protocols, if you find yourself with a low number of eggs at this age, the prognosis is limited, and this also contributes to the perception of quality for the patient. Is a quality management system necessary? Well, I must admit, in this large IVF center until 10 years ago, 10 years ago, we did not have a quality management system. We didn't even have written procedures. We introduced a quality management system, and it's been such a lot of work, but it's been so much more relaxed to have, for example, written procedures that can be consulted by all the personnel at all levels, including new people arriving at the center, to have something to rely on, and where we describe how we perform all our processes. A process analysis is also important. It's what we call risk assessment analysis, or proactive troubleshooting, you could call it. It's a method where we go through the entire process from intake of the patient and what could potentially go wrong. It's a technique that is used in the lab as well to identify potential hazards and where you can act upon proactively. And by acting proactively, you can anticipate what problems could arise and take measures in advance. And I'm talking about a process analysis for PGT or IVM or IVF or the IUI process. I think monitoring the results and the data that are being gathered in a large or even smaller IVF clinic or IVF center are very important as well, because they can be seen as key performance indicators, not only the pregnancy rates, but also the complications, complaints, ideas, patient satisfaction is a good thing to measure. A certain number of certification and accreditation systems, and they are developing as well, are now, for example, registering the risks and the complications as well. We run a patient satisfaction schedule where we have a survey from intake at booking an appointment to actually the pregnancy test and the follow-up. An online survey where the patient fills out numerous opinions on satisfaction. Happy to say that overall patients are satisfied. They would recommend the center, and I'm not making any publicity here. And I'll show you some slides, because what is important is not the patients who are happy, it's the ones that are unhappy. And you can see that, for example, on the right hand side, 16% of patients are rather unhappy because they have to wait a long time to get an appointment. They are generally happy with the communication but 9% say that the information that they received at the center was not uniform, was not consistent between one person and another. And this is important to measure. And this is more important to act upon because it contributes to the perception of quality as well and the true quality of the center. The overall satisfaction with consultation, fortunately, is fine. Oocyte retrieval as well. I'm going through this. And for example, this is an important one. We are a center attracting a lot of international patients, but also a number of international fellows. And not all of them speak Dutch. And we know that people get a bit irritated about it. And that is also part of the quality that we provide, is making sure that someone speaks the language of the patient. So overall, patients very happy, and we measure this. There are other ways to support this clinic and education and quality management systems. First of all, there's the management of the center itself, the senior people, the bosses, who are important because they have the experience, they have a vision as well, and they should provide a strategic policy planning together with the younger people and all collaborators of the center, of course. There should be clear communication about this strategic policy, but very important as well in quality, providing quality to the patient can only happen if there's a healthy work atmosphere and if there are leaders on the floor, leading by example, valuing the members of the team. And that is a consensus, not only in clinic, but also very important in laboratory. I'm sure Laura mentioned that as well. Scientific organizations provide training and certification and provide data analysis, data gathering as well. The European IVF monitoring, PGT Consortium, SART, the Canadian registry, Australian registry. There are many registries, fortunately, and this contribute to providing benchmarks and looking at what is possible. Certification, accreditation businesses, national, international, governmental. The government does some, provides some input as well. Audit companies. Of course, they're very costly, but they are evolving as well. They are looking at more than just gathering data. They're looking at quality aspects as well, performance indicators, but also risks, suggestions, complications. And then finally, I would dare to say, and it's not because this is an industry-sponsored symposium that I'm mentioning this, but industry, both pharma and biomedical companies, provide and support education and training as well. Many of you can attend conferences because of industry. Many of us are in contact with industry for feedback, and they provide guidance also in clinical and laboratory care. So in conclusion, I would dare to say that quality in the IVF clinic, as opposed maybe to quality in the IVF lab, is rather a holistic project involving many variables and involving first and foremost the patient, the referring doctor, and the clinician managing the patient. At the heart of this holistic project is the patient, who should feel safe. You should feel safe because it should feel surrounded by well-trained and knowledgeable clinicians, nurses, biologists, technicians, by a quality system, quality management system, being able to provide feedback to the system, an optimum communication, and a well-organized and happy team. I would like to finish by thanking again Cooper Surgical for the opportunity, the entire team here at the Center for Reproductive Medicine at Brussels IVF, and more specifically our quality management team. So thank you very much.